Hello BookTube and welcome to another video, and in this one I'm going to be reviewing A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. And this review will be in two parts. In part one I will avoid spoilers and just give you some general thoughts about what I thought about the book, and then in part two I will discuss some aspects in a bit more detail, and in that case there might also be some spoilers, so I'll tell you when to stop watching if you don't want to be spoiled. So, A Little Life, decidedly not a little book, 700 pages, but worth every single page. I love this book, but boy, you are in for some emotions if you're going to read this. So we follow A Little Life. In A Little Life we follow the lives of actually four friends, young men at the beginning of the book, who've just finished graduate school and moved to New York to kind of try and embark on their careers in the real world, let's say. So you have a painter, an architect, a lawyer and an actor, and the book focuses mainly on kind of the linchpin of that group in a way, which is Jude, the lawyer, and he has a dark secret in his past. It's unclear what his past is. His friends don't really quite know what's up, but there's definitely something off about him. And the book explores basically the inner life of Jude and how whatever happened to him in the past affects him, how he sees himself, how he goes through life, and therefore also his relationship with his friends. You find out quite quickly in the book, in general terms, what the dark secret is. Right, you don't get all the details, but you can kind of get a rough idea quite soon, because the book is not about, it's not about the mystery of what that secret is. It is about the emotional impact of bad things happening to you in your childhood and how that can follow through your entire life, and the possibility or impossibility of helping people who have that kind of trauma. So yeah, all Jude's friends try to help him, and there are beautiful moments in the book where they try to, through kindness, and try to be there for him and try to help him cope with this trauma he has. But yeah, the question always is, they want to help him, they love him, but will that be enough to help him or not? I promise no spoilers, so I'm not going to spoil that for you, but that is kind of the theme underlying the book. So it is beautifully written, not necessarily in terms of use of language or metaphors that really stood out to me, but you are kind of, or at least I was, deeply emotionally invested, kind of sunk its claws into my heart and never let go until the end. At least after the first couple of dozen pages. Yeah, it's really, you get sucked in, you get such a deep view into the thought processes of the main characters that you can't but help but empathize with them, and kind of at some points want to reach through the page and help them, hug them or shake them or whatever you think they need to kind of get over this barrier. There's a lot of instances where people want to say something but just somehow they can't, and you kind of want to go, just say it. But of course you can't, because it's a book. And it leaves you feeling kind of helpless and angry, and I guess that reflects very nicely what the characters also feel in the book. So yeah, if you're up for an emotional roller coaster ride, showing the very dark things people can do to each other, and the repercussions of that throughout someone's life, but also the beautiful, kind things people can do to each other, and how far people can go to try and help the friends and the people they love, then definitely read this book. Should warn you if there are themes of sexual violence and self-harm, so if those are things you want to avoid or need to prepare for, be aware of that. But yeah, otherwise, if you're willing to have some feelings, definitely read this book. So that was part 1, the spoiler-free part. Now for part 2. If you don't want to be spoiled, if you want to go into this with a completely open mind, then thanks for watching. See you next time. And if you're still here, let's dive into some spoilers. And let's start off with a less positive note, because like I said, I did love this book. It's my first 5-star read of the year. And as far as star ratings mean something. But one thing I wasn't quite sold on was the friendship of the 4 main characters. That is JB, Malcolm, Jude and Willem. And I was sold on the individual friendships, right? So kind of all of those 4 people, all individually, they get scenes in where you see the friendship happen. But their friendship as a unit, I wasn't sold on. And maybe it's kind of, especially in the opening of the book, where you rarely see them all 4 together, reminded me a bit of the opening of La Bohème, the opera, if you've seen that, which is also about 4 young men, in that case in Paris, but just moved to a big city, don't have a lot of money, but trying to kind of get by and hoping for the big break as an actor or a painter or whatever. But La Bohème really opens with this kind of quartet musical number, where you really get a sense of the friendship and the interactions between these people. Whereas in A Little Life we are told that all of them are friends, but we never get to see them as friends together with the 4 of them. Right? We see a lot of the individual interactions, and I'm sold on that. But the group as a whole, we never really see as friends. Now, I'm kind of not convinced by that, and to a certain extent also I kind of wasn't entirely sold on the friendships of Jude always. I think maybe it's because a lot of the novel is written in the third-person limited perspective, kind of following Jude, so we get his perspective on things, who's clearly not a reliable narrator, because he thinks very poorly of himself and therefore also doesn't think much of what he's doing for his friends. And therefore I think we kind of miss out a bit on what people see in Jude. Because Jude pushes his friends away quite hard sometimes, and kind of dares them to give up on him. And kind of the amazing thing of the novel is that none of them do. And sometimes you wonder, sure, that one or 2 of them stay by him through whatever, sure, but not a single one of them goes, yeah, you know what then, you don't want me as your friend, you want to be horrible to yourself, fine, you be horrible, I'm done. And we're never really shown, especially kind of the more outlying friends, let's say like Richard, we're never really shown what would motivate them to really want to help Jude to such an extent to not let themselves be pushed away no matter how hard Jude tries. So I wasn't entirely sold on that, but the novel as a whole, I think, made up for that, more than made up for that. I was so invested that I didn't really care. So that was my only real gripe. Maybe there should have been a bit more showing, a bit less telling regarding some of the friendships. So on to more positive things, or at least things that I want to discuss a bit more, not gripes. The first one is the foreshadowing, especially in the end of the book. I haven't quite figured out how Yanagihara did it, but you have this foreboding sense where you kind of see where this is going, but you just keep hoping that you're wrong about it. But you kind of feel that it's not going to end up well, and yeah, that was devastating, but also very, very well done. The main thing I wanted to talk about is the points of view from which the story is written, because I noticed some things in there and I haven't quite worked them out. I'd like to hear also your thoughts in the comments down below. because there are roughly, I'd say, 3 points of view from which a story is told. Right, there's the omniscient narrator, who we get in the first part, Lisbonard Street. There's the limited narrator, who is also a third-person narrator, but is limited to the perspective of Jude. And then there's the second-person narration, which is Harold talking to Willem, or the ghost of Willem. Right, because Willem is already dead. Yeah, and it took me, especially right at the end, I was trying to figure out why are we getting Harold talking to Willem, and in the end it kind of made sense that he was retrospectively talking like that, but I still haven't quite figured out why we get that perspective, why we're not just sticking with the third person perspective throughout. And the other thing I noticed, and why I said there are 3 narrators, I said, well, but in the first part there's a third person narration, and then the other part is also third person narration. Okay, and this, I think the main differences are that in the first part, the third person narrator follows the various characters, right? We get a chapter on Jude, a chapter on JB, a chapter on Willem, a chapter on Malcolm. But more importantly, the distinction I saw is that in the first part, Jude is mentioned by name also in third person. Right, it says something Jude did, blah blah blah. After that, even though the third person narration stays limited on Jude, Jude is never ever referred to in the third person unless in dialogue. Right, it's always he did, blah blah blah, he said, he, but never Jude did. And I think that kind of reflects how Jude is defined by other people. Right? He's initially by his experiences, by Brother Lucas, by Dr. Traylor, and then his friends try to define him or redefine him. But there is no objective Jude. There is only a he who is made Jude through his interactions with other people, through other people talking to him, interacting with him. But objectively, there is only he. And is he Jude? Who is Jude? Who gets to define Jude? I think that is an interesting thing going on there. That's kind of at least the effect it had on me once I started noticing that Jude is never called Jude by the narrator, only by other characters. So yeah, that at least was my thoughts on that narration style, which I thought was very clever and did kind of occasionally also made for a bit of disorienting effect, right? Because occasionally you're not quite sure who he is when there's a he referred to in the text. Is it Jude? Is it someone else? It's all kind of blurry. Again, kind of thing showing Jude's dependence on other characters. And yeah, I think in the end it's supposed to reflect that because of Jude's experiences, he has become so defined by them that he's unable to define himself separate from that and doesn't have an objective existence as a person. At least that's my thoughts. If you have any other thoughts, then do leave them in the comments down below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you again next time. Bye bye.